Okay, hi everybody. My name is Richard Lesperance. I go by the name of My Man Richard. Welcome to A Better Lifestyle. Today I have the pleasure to have Dave Foster. We had some technical issues last time, I hope everything is going to be okay this time. Welcome, Dave, to the podcast.
As soon as you said that, you just put the curse on it.
No,
No,
no.
hopefully, hopefully we'll get through. It's great to be here.
Great. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Dave, I'm going to jump in right into it because we're talking about the 1031 exchange. What is a 1031 exchange?
Right. It's actually, so here's the teaser. It's probably the second most powerful tool that ordinary people have to save tax dollars. And it involves selling investment real estate. When you sell a piece of investment real estate and you follow the process that's laid out in the 1031 exchange, you get to indefinitely defer paying all of the tax and all of the depreciation recapture that normally you would have had to have paid on the sale. So here's the impact of that. Let's say you had a sale like I did 30 years ago, where I had a $30,000 tax bill. If I would have done a 1031 exchange, I would have had that $30,000 to invest for myself for the next 30 years. And if someone gave you $30,000 and said, go invest it and make the profits, what do you think you'd have after 30 years?
A good chunk.
That's an industry term, a good chunk. Yeah, that's exactly right. You can kind of ballpark these things. If you make 10% a year, it takes you 7.2 years to double your money. So if I would have invested that 30,000 at 10% 30 years ago, I'd have well over $1 million from that one transaction. That's what the 1031 exchange is.
What are the advantages and the disadvantages?
So in my world, the advantage is that every day you get to keep those tax dollars for yourself. You're using them to make money for yourself. There's nothing wrong with paying tax, but when you pay the tax, you no longer get the use of the money. So it's being able to get the use of all of your money without having to pay the tax. Disadvantages, the most common real disadvantage is simply that it's a process you have to follow. That's pretty rigorous. It's not expensive, but there are some specific guidelines and timelines you have to follow. From a perceptual side of things, the most common argument against these is this: you're going to have to pay the tax anyways, so why not pay it now? I hear that all the time. And I go back to, if that is your argument, do you have a 401k? Do you have a retirement account? If so, why? And the answer is, I have a retirement account because it lets me make money on my deferred taxes. So it's the greatest thing going. So when people say that, I go, that's not an argument. The only real argument is that you do have to follow a process.
So what's the process?
So it all starts with the closing of the sale of your old real estate. From that, you cannot touch the proceeds from your sale, and your intermediary, that's people like us who are required to do the 1031 for you. We have to be involved prior to the closing of your sale. So that's when it starts. From that date, you have 45 days only to identify your potential replacement. You have 180 days to close on it. If at the end of that period of time you've sold a piece of property, you handled the process, and you ended up purchasing a property worth at least as much as you sold, you will have deferred all of the tax. So it's one of those things where you kind of have to you got to be acting decisively. You don't have time to sit around and wait and look and see. You got to be pretty proactive.
So can you use the 1031 exchange on all the real estate asset class?
Yes, that's what's beautiful, is that any type of investment real estate can be exchanged for any other type. And it's anywhere in the United States. So you could sell a duplex in Maine and buy a commercial building in San Francisco. You could sell self storage and buy a vacation rental in Florida. The type of real estate doesn't matter as long as it's investment, and the location doesn't matter as long as it's US for US or a couple small territories.
So what about foreign investors? Can they benefit from that?
Foreign investors have the opportunity to avoid what is called the FIRPTA withholding. For you all up in Canada now, stands for Foreign Investment and Real Property Tax Act. What it really is a 15% withholding when you sell your property. So if you sell a property, if you're a foreign national, you sell a property for 300,000 in the United States, the IRS is going to take $45,000 of that sale. That's a chunk. When you do a 1031 exchange, there are certain extra rules that are required. For instance, it has to be a simultaneous exchange where your sale and your purchase happen at the same time, or you have to spend this months long process to obtain a certificate of non withholding. You have to do one of those two routes. But as long as you do that, then they too get to defer all of the tax, plus they don't have to withhold the FIRPTA. So yeah, it's a big deal for foreign nationals.
So if you're in the States, if you live in the States, how is it, how's in regards to the laws? I'm sure it's different for every state. So can you talk to us about that?
Well, Section 1031 is a federal statute. So it's applied exactly the same anywhere in the United States. Now, some states have some little nuances that are added to that. Maybe another certificate you have to file with the state or whatever. But they all follow the same statute of 1031. Every state has to.
So when should someone do it?
The two most general answers, if you have a property that you has appreciated quite a bit, you bought it for 100,000, you're selling it for 200,000, well, that's $100,000 profit. You're going to pay federally probably $15,000. You're probably going to pay from the state anywhere from 10, anywhere from 5 to 30,000. So it's anywhere from 20 to $40,000 of tax. A 1031 exchange is going to cost you $1,000. So anytime you've got a lot of appreciation, it's well worth it. Anytime you have a lot of what's called depreciation, where the IRS gives you this pretend game of pretending that your property loses value every year. Why do they do that? Because you get to write that off on your taxes. So it's a tax benefit to owning investment real estate. But guess what? When you sell that property, the IRS makes you pay it back. So they give it to you, then they make you pay it back. That's not exactly cricket. The 1031 exchange allows you to avoid that. So basically, anytime you have appreciated property, property you've owned for a long time and depreciated, and anytime you're going to buy new real estate, if that's your plan, the 1031 exchange is your tool.
What about the reverse 1031?
Reverse 1031 exchange is a very specialized form. Remember, we talked about the 1031 starts with the closing of your sale and it ends with your purchase. You cannot exchange into property you already own. But if you've got a property that you want to buy and you haven't sold your old property, what do? A reverse exchange, we form a holding entity, and then we're allowed to take title to the property before you do. We can hold it for up to 180 days while you get your old property sold. And then basically you sell your old property, you use the proceeds to take title to your new property. And it's basically a way of controlling your new property without having to own it first. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What's swap and drop?
Let's say that you and I got together and we bought a piece of property and we bought it as an LLC. So we wanted the protection of that. So you and I are each 50% members of that LLC. Now, because it has multiple members, it has to file its own tax return. What that means is that the LLC is the taxpayer for the property. So, in regular terms and situations, that LLC has to sell the old property and the LLC has to buy the new property, which means you and I have to stay together, doesn't it? But for whatever reason, let's say I wanted to invest in duplexes, you wanted to invest in self storage. So the swap and drop, what happens is right before the closing of the sale, the property is quit claimed from the LLC to your name and to my name as individuals, since we're the members of the LLC. And then the property is sold. Now, who's selling the property? You're selling a piece of property, and I'm selling a piece of property. So you could do a 1031 exchange on your share. I could do a 1031 exchange on my share without having to worry what the other person is doing.
You talk in one of your podcasts I listen, you talk about the 4Ds. Talk to us about that.
I love the 4Ds. Are you going to take the test? You going to take the quiz for me, Richard?
No, I already passed. I listened, so I know what.
I know. Fair enough. Fair enough. So they're basically the four times when the tax deferred exchange, the 1031, is going to be valuable to you. And it starts out at the very beginning of your investment life cycle. And the way to get started taking advantage of this is to defer. Sell a piece of property, do a 1031 exchange. Start deferring that tax. Because every day that tax is deferred is a day the profit goes into your pocket instead of the federal government's. The second D of 1031 exchange is to defer. Because you can use the 1031 exchange to accommodate wherever you see the real estate market being advantageous at that position. Where is it in its cycle? Is our single family homes no longer so profitable, but everybody's moving into multifamily? You could do the 1031 exchange and change classes to go from single family to multifamily or to commercial. You can use it to change locations. If the Bay Area of San Francisco behind you there is overpriced, sell your San Francisco property and go buy in Austin, where it's just now growing. You can also use it to change numbers of property. Sell one property, buy several properties. Sell several properties and buy one. Whatever the real estate market is telling you it's the right time to do, the 1031 exchange can do it. Now, at this point in time, right, everybody thinks they've got this wired. So when I say, what's the third D? Everybody starts yelling, it's defer. And they're right. Because just like you can use the 1031 exchange to accommodate wherever the real estate cycle is, you can use it to accommodate wherever you're at in your personal life cycle and journey. You're early on, you got a lot of energy, but you don't have a lot of money. So you get that first property. You let it grow. Then when you sell it, you still have a lot of energy. So you're going to buy two cheap properties and fix them up. and then you're going to buy four, then you're going to buy eight, all using the 1031 exchange. Later on, you start to have more money and less time. So what do you do? Sell several, buy one. Lessen your workload. Go from active to passive. Whatever's going to accommodate your personal needs at that moment. The vacation rental thing has always been real curious to me because it's the perfect opportunity not only to get into a class of real estate that you love to hold and generally can make more off of than regular rentals, but it also allows you to buy a property that you get to hold as investment, but you also get to use it some for personal use. So when we start having families, I know that in our case, buying our vacation rentals was a huge plus because we started to make family memories. That's where we were. So all of a sudden, at the same time, I'm making investment income, I'm making family memories at the same time. When you retire, you can use the 1031 exchange to move your real estate where you want to retire. Or check this one out. You can convert one of your investment properties into a retirement residence without having to pay the tax. What a great retirement plan that is. And then you sell your primary residence, all of that money is probably going to be tax free. So that's the third D. Wherever you're at in your personal journey, the 1031 exchange can be used. Now, you and I both know what the fourth D is. What do you think our listeners are going to say? They're going to say deferred, right? And we're going to say, oh no, my friend, the fourth D is to die. Now, that does not sound very fun. I get it. But we're all heading that direction. And in the United States, when you die, your heirs get to inherit your real estate and the tax disappears. You don't pay it. Your estate doesn't pay it. Your heirs don't pay it. It's called a stepped up basis and literally becomes tax free to them. So all of that tax over all of those years that you deferred, when you die, it becomes tax free.
So is it one of your strategies, or it's a strategy that it's used or that people use in the industry?
It's both. I'm using it. I have to be pretty careful now because one of my sons decided to go to med school. I think it's so he knows when he can pull the plug on me and inherit that property tax free. But we'll see. No, it's actually, this is a very common strategy for estate planning in the United States because that huge chunk of your assets can go to your heirs tax free. So it's a great way to leave them legacy wealth.
Okay. And how long has that been around, the 1031 exchange?
If I was to ask you, what would you say? What would your guess be?
I think it's been a while because I listened before I did a little bit of research, but I think it's been a while, but I can't remember exactly.
1920. How's that? It's one of the original parts of the tax code. And it was designed originally because our nation was really trying to grow its agriculture, but farmers could not sell their farms to buy bigger farms because they couldn't afford to do it and pay the tax. And more than that, young farmers wanting to get into farming didn't have any farms to buy because everybody was holding on to them. So that's why the 1031 exchange was put into play so that farmers could use the tax dollars to go buy new investment real estate. Now, what happened over the decades, Richard, is that in the early 80s, there was a huge lawsuit with a guy named Starker between Starker and the United States government. A lot of people will either remember that or they'll know that name. That court case took almost 30 years to resolve. So during that time, everybody was kind of scared how our 1031 exchange is going to work. So there wasn't a lot that was done. There wasn't a lot that was categorized, and nobody really knew what was going on. But in 1996, Starker won. How often do we see people beating the IRS? And in 1996, the IRS had to let everybody do 1031 exchanges.
So let
And that's when it started to become popular.
so let's say someone is in their 30s and they're starting to invest in real estate and they're using the 1031. So they have different avenues because some people might not wait to think about estate planning. They're probably gonna want to flip and keep going and all that. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, the 1031 exchange is not for fix and flippers. And here's what I mean by that. Your intent when you buy your property has to be to hold it. If you're simply buying it to resell it, it's not going to qualify for a 1031 exchange. So there are people that fix and flip all over the place, don't they? But those people are paying the highest taxes possible. They're losing 30 to 50% of their profit. So you got to do two flips to make enough income that you would from one property that you bought and hold. That's a lot of extra work. So what I tell people is because your intent has to be to hold it, change your model just a little bit. Instead of buying a property and fixing it and selling it, buy the property, fix it, put a renter in it. Now it's investment property, isn't it? And then what you can do if you're really anxious to get going, do a refinance. Pull the money out of that property and take it and go buy your next one. You're not going to slow yourself down very much, are you? But now, in 6 or 8 months, once you've had that property for the first one for a year, now you can sell it into a 1031 exchange. And you just took yourself from 50% tax to zero. And all of that tax is being used by you to build your portfolio.
So if you're doing, let's say, a buy and hold, let's say for 10 years on a multifamily, for example, so and then you do the 1031 exchange. So that would be a good strategy to.
Absolutely. Yeah. People ask, how long do I have to hold a property? Uh, there's no statutory period. You have to be able to demonstrate that it was your intent to hold it. So most people feel comfortable with anything more than a year. So what I tell people is you want to pay zero in tax throughout your life? Buy a property, hold on to it for a year, then sell it. Do a 1031 exchange. Buy another property, hold it and sell it. Buy two properties, hold them and sell them. Pay zero in tax. It's a big deal.
So there's a lot of things like to understand a little bit, like to understand properly, like the mechanic for people to benefit from that 1031, right?
Yeah, it's not the simplest of things to understand, particularly because it's such a strategic tool to use. So what I tell people is the best 1031 exchanges are going to be the ones that have the longest runway or exit ramp. You want to be able to start planning way before you're going to do one. Don't wake up tomorrow, decide you're going to sell the property, and do a 1031. Start thinking about selling the property months in advance. Because the way you chart your course is going to determine how successful you are.
Have there been abuse of that 1031?
Yes, most commonly, the most common abuse by the client is buying a piece of property that they fully intend just to fix and flip. And then they say, Dave, an accident happened. This property is not going to make the rents I need. So I'm going to change my intent. My intent all along was to hold it, but I can't make the rent that I could have. So I'm going to change it and sell it to a 1031. Now, is that legitimate? Sure, it could be. If that's really what it was. You could have bought the property intending to rent it, and the house next door became a meth lab, or you can't make the numbers work, or the neighborhood is changing. All of those things could be used as evidence that you're changing your intent, aren't they? And as I tell people, an accident like that happens once is an accident. Don't ever not do something just because it might be questioned. But don't ever do something just because you can get away with it. So those are the people, when that same accident happens 4 or 5 times a year, come on. Was it really changing their intent, or are they trying to game the system? And so that's what I say. You just need to be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, this really was my intent. Here's what happened. Here's how I can demonstrate it. I'm going to sell the property and do a 1031 exchange. And if you stay on that path, you'll be fine.
And what are some mistakes you see people do?
Sell your property before you have the QI in place. That's number one. Because once the sale closes, you can no longer do a 1031 exchange. We have to be involved prior to the closing of the sale. Second biggest mistake is to not be focused on the type of property you want to buy or where you want to buy it way before you close your sale. You've only got 45 more days. So if you're still trying to decide between a 2-story in New York, a commercial property in San Diego, and a condo in Washington, your 45 days has no chance of working because you're not able to focus your direction enough.
So who are the legal people, the professionals that you need by your side when you do when you do the 1031?
The 1031 exchange for the investor looks and acts exactly like any other real estate transaction. So your accountant is key. Your realtor is key. Your title company, your closing attorney, all of those people you use like normal. The 1031 exchange requires one other addition, and that's the qualified intermediary who has to be unrelated to everything else. If I'm your accountant, I can't be your QI. If I'm your attorney, I can't be your QI. We have to be an arm's length processor of only the 1031 exchange, and you have to use one. You can't DIY it.
What's a QI?
Stands for qualified intermediary, and what it basically means is that we don't have any other relation with you other than doing the 1031. Our setup is only to do the 1031 exchange. Now, there's no special requirements on who can be a QI and what kind of education there is. So those are questions you got to ask. Like in my firm, we're all attorneys and accountants. So I'm an accountant, but I don't do taxes. I only do 1031 exchanges. And when you've got a QI firm like that, you can feel pretty safe about the counsel you're being given.
Last words in regards to the 1031?
I'm a big fan. I've been using them for myself for 30 years. And aside from that first transaction, I've never made a penny in capital gains tax or depreciation recapture. So I am a fan and I believe in it for others. That's why we started the business 26 years ago, was because we saw how powerful it is. But plan ahead so that you can take full advantage of it.
So what's the business all about?
The 1031investor.com is where you can reach us. And we've got a YouTube channel. We've got articles, calculators to help you figure out your tax, opportunities to talk to me and my folks. We're that extra piece to the puzzle that you want to have on your side.